Hello everyone, I cordially welcome you all to another video from the React tutorial series, and in this video we are going to discuss on conditional rendering in React. So without any delay, let's get started. First of all, what is conditional rendering? As I have already said, React as a popular JavaScript library helps us to create dynamic and interactive single page applications. So if you are not sure what are single page applications, you can consider watching one of our previous videos where we have discussed in detail what are single page applications and why they are a necessity in modern web development. Conditional rendering means showing something on the browser based on some specific condition or showing different things when the condition changes. Conditional rendering is used in the following cases. First of all, showing loader while fetching data from API and then showing the data and content once the data is loaded. Toggling between different tabs on the navigation bar. Showing or hiding some elements from the DOM when certain specific conditions are met. Lastly, showing different elements before and after authentication or authorization. So you might find a few more use cases, but these are the pretty popular ones which I have jotted down here. So discussing about the first point, showing loader while fetching data from API and then showing the data and content once the data is loaded. So in web development, it is a good habit to show something on the screen until our data is ready. Sometimes it so happens due to complexity of the database, the data which takes more time to come from the backend to the front end. So in the meantime, rather than showing a blank display, we should show a loader. So in this case, we use conditional rendering, like if no data exists, show the loader, and if the data comes and gets assigned, then show the data. Okay. The next point, toggling between different tabs on the navigation bar. Toggling between tabs generally is taken care by routing, which we are going to discuss in one of our upcoming videos. Suppose you have a very small navigation bar with 3 different tabs. Now, depending on the tab you click, different content will be displayed in the main area. So there also we use conditional rendering. Thirdly, showing or hiding some elements from the DOM when certain specific conditions are met. Here you can consider a login form. Like if you have given some email or password and if they are not matching from the backend, or you might have a form where you have entered some wrong data, like for an input type email you have entered some text basically which is not an email, so you see some red small text under the input type. Okay, this is to let the user know that you are doing something which is not correct and expected. Okay, so there when the data is wrong, we show the red text, but once the data is corrected, we vanish the warnings. Okay, this is also a very good example of conditional rendering. And lastly, showing different elements before and after authentication or authorization. Here you can say when you just visit a website, you might not be logged in at the very first time, but on the navigation bar you will see the sign in button or register button. So once you sign in, the sign in button will no longer be there. You might see a profile icon with your profile details, or you might also see a sign out button there. So here in these cases, we generally find an extraordinary use of conditional rendering. Though you might know few more points which you might add in the comment section, but here, as I have already said, these are the most prime examples we generally use. Okay. So now as we are done with our theoretical part, let's go back to the code base and understand how we can implement conditional rendering both in class component and in function component. Here we are back again in our VS Code, and here we are going to discuss how we can implement conditional rendering. So first of all, in the left side, you can see I have created a folder within our source folder named as conditional rendering, and here we have 2 files. One for the CC, that is the class component, and one for the FC, that is the functional component. So let's start with the class component. First of all, we have imported React, and thereafter we have created our class component named as homepage. So how do we create class component? First of all, we write the class keyword, thereafter the name of the class. It extends the component class from React. And here, as I have already said, we need to define the types. The first type is for the props. Now, in our case, as we are not receiving any props from our parent app component, so we have given a pair of curly braces. And here, as we are using a state, so we have defined a type for our state. So here we have said our state will contain an isLogin variable which will contain only Boolean data. Thereafter, we have defined our state variable, that is state equal to, within a pair of braces, isLogin equal to false. By default, we are setting the value of the isLogin variable to false. Thereafter, we have defined two methods. One is the login user and another one is basically the logout user. Okay. So once you have defined any state variable, you can alter the value of that state variable using the setState method, which we generally invoke as this.setState. Okay. Here also you can pass any parameter which will be treated as the previous state value. So depending on the previous state value, you can modify the next state. But here, as we are directly setting up to true or false, we are not taking the previous state into consideration. So this dot set state is login equal to true. So what happens when this function is invoked using this dot set state? It sets the value of the state variable from false to true. We also have a logout user function which does the exact same thing, but it sets the value of the state variable is login to false. Okay. Thereafter, as I have already said, in our class component we do have our render methods which basically returns a React node. Now within our return we have written our JSX code. Now this is the main part which we need to understand. We have a parent container fluid div. Within that we have opened and closed a pair of curly braces, and here I have written the conditional rendering JSX. Okay. So here I have written this dot state, that means this state variable dot isLogin, basically this isLogin variable, and have given a question mark. Basically we are using a ternary operator. If this dot state dot isLogin calculates to true, we will show this part, that is we will show hello John, and here we will show the sign out button. But if this state variable evaluates to false, we will show the generic user part, which will be hello user, button and the sign in button. Okay. And if you are not familiar with this, so just for a second, if you ignore these two divs, you will see it is basically a ternary operator. So our main condition, the truthy part that should execute, the falsy part that should execute. Okay. And finally we have exported our home page. Now to utilize this, we need to again import this in our parent component app.tsx. So we have imported it in our parent app.tsx and we have called it from our parent component. So to realize how this works, we need to run the application. So how do we do that? We go to terminal and we write npm start. Let our app start and wait for some time. So as you can see, our application has started, and by default we can see hello user and a sign in button. This is so because by default our isLogin is basically false, and if this .state.isLogin evaluates to false, we will see the generic user component, that is hello user and the sign in button. Once I click on his sign in button, we see hello John and sign out. This is so because when we click on the sign in button, we call this .login user. So this login user basically updates the state variable to true, and once this state variable changes, our DOM gets repainted, basically re-rendered. And then what happened? Then as this .state.isLogin evaluates to true, we see this part, that is hello John and a sign out button. Now once we click on the sign out button, we go back to the previous state, hello user sign in. This is because when we click on the sign out button, we trigger this logout user, and this logout user basically sets the value of the state variable again back to false. Okay, I hope this is clear with you. Now this is how we can do conditional rendering in React, specifically in class component. There are multiple methods of doing, but this is the most widely used method. Okay, now we will understand how we can do the exact same thing in functional component. So let's go to our code FC. I am closing the CC one. So here we have created a function home page and we have exported it. Now using the useState hook, we have created a local state variable isLogin. So as I have said in one of our previous videos that this useState takes in a default value, that is default argument, which it sets to the isLogin. So as we are setting false, so the default value of the isLogin state variable is false. And this useState hook also returns us a method which actually helps us to update the state variable. Here also we have a login user method which basically sets the state variable to true. Here also we have the logout user method which sets the state variable to false. And rather than using this keyword, because it is a function and so we don't have this or constructors or anything associated with object oriented programming. So here we can directly write isLogin ? So if isLogin is true, the first part will be executed, and if the isLogin is false, the second part will be executed. Okay. Now let's import this in our main parent component and run our code to see if that is working. We will start our application. Let's wait for some time. So our application has started, and as I said, we default see hello user sign in. Once we click on the sign in button, we see hello John and sign out. Once we click on the sign out button, we are again back to our initial state. Okay. So I hope this concept is clear with you. The main takeaway is basically here we have implemented conditional rendering in a form of ternary operator. Okay. This is the easiest way to write code, and basically it also gives you control over the whole JSX. Basically what to render when the condition is true and what to render if the condition is false. Okay. Now let's go back to our presentation. So I hope you like this video. In case you like this video, feel free to hit the like button and subscribe to our channel. We are going to bring more videos in the future. For any queries, doubts, suggestions or feedbacks, feel free to post them in the comment section. We are going to reply. So thank you for now. See you in the next video. Bye.